when you talk about what Citizens for Prison Reform is really aiming at, that a group of citizens in society has come together because we all have experienced a loved one who has experienced the carceral system, criminal justice system. And through our own individual love and care and concern and advocacy for our loved ones, we have found out that there was many other people just like us that have also have a loved one that has experienced incarceration. And we began to share mutual values and understanding that we need to be more supportive and be there for our loved ones because the system is not doing what it was supposedly designed to do. Even though we know it's a huge misnomer and what rehabilitation is really designed to do, but we have to be the ones to change the narrative. We have to be the ones to redesign what justice and healing really looks like, what restoration really looks like in our community. And so this work that we're doing through Citizens for Prison Reform is crucial to be the advocate voice of families and community members who are fighting not just for themselves, for their family members, but for a changed society. Because ultimately the outcome is that our family members who may experience incarceration, they're going to return back home to our communities. And when they return back home to us, we need them and we want them to be returned back to us whole and healthy and prepared to rejoin families, rejoin societies, and live a productive life. So I'm going to give you a brief update of some of our great work that we've been doing since I joined the organization in April of this year as Government Relations Liaison. I've had an opportunity, the really distinct opportunity to continue building relationships with our legislators. And we know that relationship building is the fundamental core component to community. Without relationship building, we can't have community. And in this community space, particularly a society as large as America, we see that America represents about 5% of the world's population, but has roughly a quarter of the world's people incarcerated. So it says something about us in society, about what we're willing to tolerate through what we've created, through a very excessive punitive system that we have somehow continued to allow to persist in our society. And so it takes an organization like Citizens for Prison Reform to begin advancing some legislative goals. And three of our primary legislative goals are born out directly from the concerns of family members, such as all of you in this room today. And you know the story of the Citizens for Prison Reform. It started because of a mother's experience with a son who was experiencing incarceration and solitary confinement. And it was made known that this is a phenomenon that is happening in every jail, in every prison, even our juvenile facility where youth are detained at, that people are being isolated and detained in such conditions of confinement that are very negative to psychological development and well-being. And so therefore, Citizens for Prison Reform began starting advocating for family members to make sure that family members who have a loved one that's incarcerated, that may be experiencing some of these hardships of incarceration, are relieved to know that we are fighting, that we have come together to use our voice to actually fight for some significant change so that we can release the burden upon our family members and upon our loved ones that are incarcerated. So we've advanced several different bills, and one of them, of course, is the solitary bill package that we've been working diligently with Senator Stephanie Chang and several other very important community members and partners, such as Missing with Disability. This is an opportunity for us, and this bill draft is in its final form now. We're doing our final review and edit of this draft bill, and we're hoping to introduce this in the Senate. And then, of course, you know the road, the trajectory to legislation being passed. It's going to go through the Senate, through a committee, be voted out of a committee, hopefully, to the main floor, voted in the main floor, hopefully voted out of the main floor, and then goes over to the House. Then once it goes into the House, it's introduced into a committee. It goes from that committee to the main floor. If it's passed there, then it goes to the governor's desk. And that's what we're hoping for with this particular bill, the solitary package bill. And it's important because it has set a precedent here in the state of Michigan. And it has set a precedent that connects directly to our Corrections Ombudsman bill, another very important legislative package that really maintains our ability as society to oversee, right, our corrections department, a department that we fund through our tax dollars. One of the biggest departments in the state of Michigan is the Corrections Department. It has a multi-billion-dollar annual budget. And their responsibility is to assure us that they are spending our money adequately, but it's tied into our public safety, to our outcome, to an outcome in society that we mutually benefit from. So therefore, the Corrections Ombudsman Bill would allow us, as society, through the Ombudsman Department in the legislature, to actually oversee the Department of Corrections, to get up close and personal with assuring that policies and practices are happening that are healthy policies and practices, that people aren't being harmed inside prison, that we are able to then evaluate, assess, and hold people accountable for the way in which the system is being operationalized, for the way in which our family members are being impacted by the carceral system. So those two important bills are very important that we've been working on. And the Correction Ombudsman Bill, it got voted out with all yes votes right through the Senate. And it's now what we typically call stalled in the House. So there's a lot of things happening here in the state of Michigan with our recent budget. That budget is now passed. And so we're hoping that this bill that's now sitting in one of the committees will be elevated to the committee level to which it can be discussed. Testimony can be taken. We will surely let you know when that takes place. We'll be inviting some of you to come speak and testify. And then hopefully get voted out of that to the main floor. And after that, it can go to the governor's office to be signed. Our last important bill that's very crucial, and which was talked about in the presentation by our keynote, is family visitation. Family visitation is so essential. I was just talking to someone who actually works in the Department of Corrections, and I was explaining to them, and they work in the Department of Corrections, that there is no fundamental legal right for anyone to access people inside prisons besides lawyers, right, and law enforcement. That's the only people who have a fundamental right to access someone who is currently incarcerated. Well, Michigan Disability has the ability to enter the prisons, but there's no right for us as family members to see our loved ones who are incarcerated. There's no right for our loved one who is incarcerated to access and see us. There's no legislated law that would guarantee that. We want to change that because we know the value, the power of having that connection, having that family bond. Me, myself, haven't been directly impacted, haven't been incarcerated, sitting in day rooms in prisons, looking and watching people wait for mail. It's one of the most depressing hours of the day. You would think it would be the most depressing hours when it was time to lock in at night. But no, the most depressing hour is when you're sitting in that day room and mail is being delivered and your name's not being called, or your name's not written on the chalkboard to come get your mail. And then you do that again the next day, and again the next day. And don't be anticipating a visit and something happens with the system, the policy, the practice up front somewhere where your visit is denied and you're waiting and waiting and waiting. So the right to access family is so crucial to the well-being of both sides, the family members, the loved ones, the person incarcerated. It is the most powerful rehabilitative tool we can ever imagine. And we need to fight for and strengthen our capacity to interact with and to continue caring for and loving our loved ones who are locked up. And lastly, what I want to mention about our update is we've had some rehabilitative justice opportunities lately. We've had an opportunity to work here locally in Ingham County Jail, but we've also had an opportunity to work with Washtenaw County Jail. Working with Washtenaw County Jail was a crucial stepping stone for some of the most important work at the county jail level. At the county jail level, there's hardly any real oversight whatsoever. Talk about the Department of Corrections. But at the county jail level, you have to understand that a sheriff has almost, complete autonomy to manage and maintain their system, their jail facility, how they like. With very little, with none oversight whatsoever, technically, right? And so we even have an opportunity, we were invited earlier this year to sit down and participate in their interest in heading off the usage of restrictive housing, right? Because they started to see that we can do better with the way in which people are doing their time. And placing people in restrictive housing is damaging. We see this solitary cell behind us. This thing, having to be there for 24 hours a day, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months, and in some prison systems for decades, to be confined to that space. No programming, no real interaction, no real humanity. There's no humanity in that space. There's no real life in that space. When we see alternative justice, some people just wanted to see who were in solitary. They just wanted to see the grass. because they were in such solitary conditions where the only opportunity for outside was through ventilation screens that was up 10, 20 feet in the air where you couldn't even see the clouds. You couldn't see the birds. You couldn't see airplanes flying. You could barely even hear them, right? So Washington County Jail invited us to participate in sending them their restrictive housing team, which evaluates case by case each individual that is in restrictive housing to evaluate and assess how can we move them out of this position? How can we get them back in general population? Or alternatively, back into a predicament where it's going to be supportive to their needs while they're there. That's the real model. So fortunately, when we first started working with them, they just had a couple people in their restrictive housing, and just over the course of the months that we worked with them, it continued to get lower and lower and lower. So we shifted our work and working with them and started doing other work with them. Some great, phenomenal work. I can tell you all about other things, but I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're running low on time. But lastly, we've had a chance to work right here in Ingham County with the Restorative Justice Initiative here in Ingham County. I don't know if you understand, but I think most of you might do. The real power and value of having access to programs while you're incarcerated. I think you all understand that. Unfortunately, the way the system operates, it prioritizes, particularly in our prison system, it prioritizes people by how close they are to being released. So that if I'm just a couple years from being released, I'm prioritized for programs and services and treatment before someone who has 10 years or 15 or 20 years. We see that to be a very crucial mistake. Right? The longer time you have, in fact, the more programming and support services you're going to need for an extended stay in isolation, separated from society and family and loved ones. You're going to need continuous support services, continued treatment services, continued programming and elevation intellectually and educationally to prepare you for when you do return. For those that are there a short time, however, they're prioritized immediately. So what we see happening even at the county jail level, there's very little access to programs. The Rehabilitative Justice Program says that family members recognize that their loved ones are sitting idle, doing nothing. And family members are saying, hey, my child, my son, my loved one, my husband, my wife, etc., if they were able to engage in some other program while they're there, they would be prepping themselves. Self-directed preparation, right? Helping along to expedite their own rehabilitative process. So how could we then be supportive of that? So we began being supportive of that by partnering with ACCI, the American Corrections Center, and it's a phenomenal evidence-based program where individuals who are incarcerated can take self-directed program in various fields, anger management. We've had driver responsibility, and there's multitudes of programming, substance use disorder, etc., where they can then take these self-directed curriculums and then have assigned to them a coach. And so I got a chance to coach. Myself and one of our other staff members got a chance to coach with individuals and have one-on-ones and have group sessions and support them in their own self-directed direction toward their own rehabilitative justice, right? And that's a healing model, a self-directed healing model, because the way to really heal is the type of healing in which not only are people supported, but they're supported in finding what works for them. What's going to be necessary to support and sustain their transformational change. That someone is there, a system, a support system, organization is there to help them along that path. And that's what CPR has been doing. That's what our work has been galvanizing. We've been deeply rooted in how can we continue to help people be better prepared to return to their family members, because that's what families want. Families want to make sure that their loved one who is currently incarcerated receives what they need while they're there to return home, not scarred, not permanently damaged, but whole, healthy, and healed. And so our reform is a reform of restoration, a restoration of return back to wholeness, to love and care, which is what community is all about. So once again, thank you all for coming and joining in our phenomenal work. So excited to see so many of you here and continue to support our work and put some money up. We need to raise some money. So thank you, everyone.
Let's give it up for Hakim. Now you see why we get things done last year.